Hey everybody, welcome back to Metroid, no major skips. This is part 2 in which we will be dealing with Kraid, Mother Brain, and beating the game. We're gonna finish today. So, we started out the first part by talking about how to prevent a gamer from spawning in the first place. In this part, I'm gonna be talking about how to kill a gamer before it spawns in the first place. It's a subtle difference, but you'll see what I mean. So you'll notice I'm about to shoot in a very specific spot, and the missile's gonna disappear, and then a gamer's gonna spawn, and I'm gonna have to jump over him. That is not supposed to happen. So you're supposed to time it so that you're shooting when you're crossing this flat block on the ground. Now that we have so much more missiles from defeating Ridley, you'll notice we're going to be using a lot of those on gamers. Even though they only take 2 shots to kill, it's just so much faster to deal with them just with one missile, and you have a much wider range to hit them with as well. As you fall through this next shaft, you're going to want to count how many gamers you pass by. After the 3rd gamer, you want to bear left, and you'll usually make it onto the platform. We're going to have a gamer here that's going to try to get in the way, and we just prevent him by keeping the screen in place. We do this by just doing a little short hop off of the platform instead of running off. As you might recall from the last part, jumping in midair is slower than running, so that'll prevent you from scrolling the screen. And when the screen's locked at certain positions, enemies will just stop at the edge and turn around. There's also another spawn kill there that I've never been able to get. I have no idea where you're supposed to shoot. Coming up on Kraid, in which everything does 20 damage. It's not quite as rough as Hideout 2, but it can be pretty bad. We have these googly eye creatures that go around the platforms. For whatever reason, the direction they're crawling seems to be determined by how long you've been playing the game. It seems like they'll switch direction every, 10 or 15 minutes. It's really weird. Kind of makes me wonder if other enemies are affected by this as well. That may account for the differences between password RNG states. So going through this hallway, it can be pretty difficult to deal with the bees, but an alternative way to get through here is to just dive into the acid and just constantly jump, because touching the acid will make you invulnerable, just like getting hit, but it'll do much less damage. It'll do damage every 3 or 4 frames, so you take very little damage going through there. But it is, since you're just jumping the whole way through, a lot slower. Now, I kind of screw up this morphing through this door. I accidentally land before going through the door, and that'll make the bee fly lower. If you watch any other speedrun, you'll see them going clean through that room, just bouncing a few times, and then getting hit by the scree at the end. Just getting a little boost from that. So here's Kraid, arguably the hardest boss in any of the Metroid games. What he does is he shoots these spikes from his face and his stomach, and he lobs these, I don't know what they are, Molotov boomerangs or something, and they're really hard to get through. But he does have certain patterns that are dependent on the password state. On the 1st and 3rd states, he'll walk back and forth about halfway across the room and lobbing the fingernails or whatever they are really far. On states 2 and 4, he'll do a short strut, and on the 4th pattern, he'll be throwing these nails even shorter so that you could just camp out on the top block and wait for an opening to hit him without getting hit. This is not recommended because you have to cycle through his patterns, but with his default pattern, what tends to happen is he'll hit you through the door, and as you're transitioning through the room, he'll hit you again. And even if you don't die from it, it's unloading his sprite, which is resetting his health. So what do you do when you come this far and then you're sent all the way back to the elevator with 30 health? Well, luckily there's this backup energy tank here. Just shoot open this tunnel, and you can freeze the bee if you want, but you won't really have to worry about it since you're bomb jumping into the tunnel anyway. You're going to be invincible during that. And getting out of this room is this isn't actually the recommended way to do this. You can bomb jump up through that hole, but it's much more consistent to go up and around the top of those pillars. And just like start a morph ball from the top of that pillar, and that'll guarantee that you actually make your way into the morph ball tunnel. So how do you really fight Kraid? It's often recommended that you plant bombs so that you're invincible when you bounce off of them. You could get in up to 4 hits at a time. But if you try to play it safe and avoid damage altogether, that's gonna fail spectacularly, and you're not going to be able to hit them consistently. Well, an important thing to know about the Kraid fight is that both Kraid and Ridley actually have very peculiar ways of taking damage. Bombs deal 1 damage to Kraid. As it turns out, so does Ice Beam, and so does Wave Beam, and so does apparently Screw Attack. They all do 1 damage, and he has 96 health. What's most effective on him actually is missiles, which do 4 damage. If you do the math, in fact you don't have to do the math, I'll do it for you. That's 24 missiles to kill Kraid. So what do you do when this strategy fails and you just wasted 3 energy tanks? And you go back to the elevator with 30 again. Well, you could refill energy from the pipe bug in the bridge room previous, but I recently discovered that you could actually go in the room before that and just plant a bomb on this pipe and then just jump to spawn it, and you'll kill it while it's in the ground and you can collect the refills. It's pretty neat, but shouldn't farm too long, because you don't actually need too much energy. Now, Dragondarch, when he does runs, he recommends this strategy against Kraid, where you freeze the spikes on his face, you run up against them, and just hammer away with missiles. You'll beat him in like 8 or 9 seconds. The quicker you beat him, the less damage you could possibly take. And the method I personally use is I freeze these spikes as they're flying through the air, and I put my back against them so that when I get hit, I stay in place and I don't accidentally shoot over his head. This strategy also works compared to Dragondarch. It's actually about the same. Now, you'll also want to mash select while you're doing this. That'll do damage between missiles with the regular beam. Getting this energy tank is really tricky because you have to shoot the block, then do an unmorph jump to get out, and then you gotta morph on top of the upper platform, land on the ground, and that's the only reliable way to actually get the right position and speed to get into the hole with the energy tank. It's surprising how complicated it is just to get that one tank. And that's the intended way, I believe, as far as I'm aware. Now, getting up this room of shootable blocks, this is pretty notorious. There's a slow way where you just like jump up the blocks as they're respawning, but you could also do a faster way where you'll just stand on the very edge and jump out and shoot the blocks and go back in. But you'll notice from time to time the blocks won't shoot out. That's because there are blocks below the screen that are reforming. In fact, you'll notice at the top of this pillar, I get hit by apparently nothing. That's the blocks reforming on top of me, even though they're below me. The way the screen scrolls work in Nintendo games and NES games are pretty goofy. And you may have noticed these side hoppers are jumping short. This is one way you can tell what pattern you're getting with Kraid. This seems to be tied to whether he's doing a long walk or just a short little strut. That's one way you can tell what's going to happen. But with the strategies to beat Kraid, it winds up not actually making a difference. Now, getting out of this hole is pretty tricky. You can bomb jump out of there. You have to make sure that you don't press right before you jump, because otherwise you won't be able to jump. But if you miss it once, you just wait for the Ripper to fly over, and you're good to go. You may notice that I got another 75 missiles from Kraid. Of course, this helps a great deal in Turian as well. Not to mention that you have all these missiles to deal with these gamers on your way up. As I said before, this is the preferred method for dealing with them. Even though it's pretty overkill, it's also more reliable and plain and simply faster. Now we have another spawn shot. This is the last one in the game. I, of course, missed this as well. Once again, you shoot when you're crossing the middle of that flat piece of the ground. When I did this run, I actually just kind of winged it because I didn't know exactly what the visual cue was. But having a visual cue, of course, does help a great deal. When you go up this shaft, you'll notice most of the time these gamers on the left are going to try to get in the way. This can actually be an advantage because you could freeze them and use them as platforms, and that allows you to skip a platform every round. However, if you freeze them just slightly too late, you'll just fail the next jump. You won't quite get the height necessary, and you'll lose like 2 seconds. Using them as platforms saves such little time that any mistake resulting from this will wind up being slower, but it's still worth going for. It's not too difficult. You just have to be careful not to release jump while you're firing. Now, another important thing to note when you're going up here is the ripper positions. You'll notice I freeze this ripper as it's going left. That means that every ripper that I'm going to deal with, except for one, as I go up here, will start off going to the left, because they'll all be scrolled off the screen facing left. That's the way they work. Knowing that will save you a couple seconds. Other than that, just make sure you're jumping as soon as possible up each platform. Now at the end of this hallway, there are a couple of pipe bugs that you could use if you're low on missiles. There's additionally a little crab eagle thing right here that swoops down. You could just go to the right from these pipes and it'll be really easy to hit them. But Turian is so much better a place to farm that you just don't worry about it for any percent. So typically throughout Turian you're gonna want to get missile drops, which is a lot to ask for because missiles are actually pretty rare. So the best way to get missile refills is to, first of all, freeze all 3 Metroids in one spot and hit them with 4 missiles, and then kill each of them with the last shot one at a time. This will use 7 missiles and give you 3 chances at missile refills. Alternatively, if you kill them all at the same time, you're using 5 missiles, but you're only getting 1 shot because it'll give you the same refill that you just got. Not just the same type of refill, but the exact same refill cloned twice. Because the way the refill drop works is it's actually listed out as you enter the room. There's no way to know what you're getting, but you can increase your chances if you kill things separately. Now for this missile door, as you go through you're going to get hit by Rinkas, but it's technically possible if you morph and go through the door when you're hanging in midair, you could dodge them. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to work for me at all on my first time through. I don't know what's up with that. I haven't figured out a consistent way to get through there yet. Now you're just going to want to freeze these Metroids and just run past them, because you don't need to kill them like you do in other Metroid games in order to progress, so don't waste your ammo. It's very precious. Now you have to zigzag back and forth between these platforms, and typically a speedrunner would want to cut the corners really close. But if you want to play it really risky, you'll want to dodge around this green Metroid, and to do that you'll have to lure it pretty far to the side to get its momentum built up, so that you could fling it around to either side of you. But you'll have to be careful, because if you do get hit by a Rinka, one of those Spaghetti-O things, not only will you take 30 damage, but it'll also slow you down enough for the Metroid to potentially catch up. In this last Metroid room, you'll get one last opportunity to farm missiles. You can do that on these last 3 Metroids. Some strategy guides would recommend that you go through the previous door and get 2 at a time, but again, that's really inefficient because you're only killing 2 Metroids, and if you're killing them at the same time, you're only getting 1 chance for a refill. So like I said before, you want to kill 3 Metroids separately for more than double the chance of drops. Now to respawn this last batch of Metroids, you go to this specific patch of 4 blocks on the floor. Just go a little bit past that, Technically it is faster to get lucky and just get 3 of the same missile refill, but I wouldn't rely on it personally. You don't know what's coming. Although I've had a tendency to get a missile specifically on the 4th refill in this room, it doesn't happen 100% of the time. You could also try to farm on these 2 Metroids on the right, but it's up to you really. Whatever you have the patience for. Now, since I got really lucky in the first Metroid room, I actually don't need to farm at all here, so I just go to the end of the room, open the door, morph on the ground, and roll through. This has like a 2/3 chance of getting through without getting hit. These Zebetite barrier things, as you might guess, it would theoretically be quickest to freeze Rinkas right in front of the barrier, which would allow your missiles to hit sooner, which will allow you to shoot more rapidly. And on top of that, it's a safe haven from the turrets, which also do 30 damage. Unfortunately, this is a very difficult strategy. It's really inconsistent. And on top of that, it actually takes so long to attempt to set them up that it winds up not actually being worth it anyway. The advantage is that it takes 8 missiles to destroy these things, and since they recover health every half second, this ensures that you destroy them rapidly enough to not waste missiles. But since you have a capacity of 155 missiles, that's not really that much of an issue. You can just do what I do here and just tank hits from the turrets, use that invulnerability to pass through the Rinkas, and just hammer away at these Zebetites until they're totally destroyed. Whether or not they recover their energy is not that big a deal. Mother Brain actually has a similar foe strategy to it. I mentioned before how Kraid and Ridley have really unique ways of taking damage, but against Mother Brain, nothing damages her whatsoever except for missiles, which do 1 damage. She has 32 health, and Quick Glass, of course, gets destroyed on 1 missile. Now right here, I'm going to show how to play this safely. You want to keep these Rinkas frozen at all times, and you just take the time to freeze every Rinka before you start attacking Mother Brain again. And you'll have to go back a couple times. I do wind up accidentally falling on the lava anyway. That's the danger of this boss fight. The theoretically quick way is actually to get really close to Mother Brain. Of course, it would help if you freeze a Rinka to stand on right in front of Mother Brain in such a way that you avoid the turret. But this is even more difficult to do than standing on Rinkas for the Zebetites. And on top of that, if you get hit by a Rinka from behind, it'll knock you into Mother Brain's tank, which itself does 20 damage, and it completely ignores invulnerability. So you're essentially getting hit for 50 every time you make a mistake. If you go back through the video and time it, you'll notice that the way I do it here is actually 2 seconds slower than the safe way. So, yeah, play this safe. I strongly recommend it. And the escape sequence is pretty routine. It's kind of difficult because you have to make these jumps pretty tight. It's very easy to accidentally hit your head on the platform above you. You have to jump off the very edge of them. Now, if you have high jump, it does make this quite a bit easier because you could just jump up to the middle platform and then run off the edge onto the lower platform and then jump over. I mean, you'll understand it when you try it, but it's also slower unless you specifically do it this way and just do short jumps. So at the end of the game, this may be a big spoiler if you haven't beaten the game before. In the original NES manual, it refers to Samus as a him, but you find out if you go through the game fast enough that Samus is actually a grill. One of the biggest spoilers in gaming history. You should all know this by now. This game is like 28 years old. But there you go. That's the ending. I got a time of 26:03, which I am very happy with. My goal kind of was sub 27 minutes, but honestly, I was just happy to get a run in which I didn't die. That's NES hard games, essentially. You're probably going to die, and it's going to cost you several minutes. If you do watch this tutorial and you just use the strategies I mentioned, and you practice enough to actually get a run in which you don't die, you'll probably wind up with a time under half an hour. It makes that big a difference, just knowing how the game works in general. And on top of that, it'll likely be much easier. But it will take several tries, so don't get discouraged. Just have fun with it. I don't really have a recommended time you should shoot for when you're first starting out. Just run it a lot and see if you can do it without dying. For those of you stuck with me throughout this, I'm interested to hear what kind of times you guys are getting. So leave a comment below. See you guys next time. Thanks for watching.